Welcome back to the OurView Podcast. On today's episode, I welcome my guest, Adriana Mallozzi. Adriana and I discuss many topics during our conversation. Primarily, we focus on the role that technology plays in the lives of those who have disabilities. So I would like to welcome everyone back to another episode of the OurView Podcast, where we aim to educate, raise awareness, and change the tone of conversation. I am happy to be back with this brand new episode, and my guest today is Adriana Mallozzi, and I'm looking forward to our conversation today. And Adriana, thank you for joining us on this episode of the podcast.
Thank you for having me.
So, we'll get into Clubhouse a little bit later in the discussion, but you and I, we met on Clubhouse like so many of my other guests. Most recently, I've met through Clubhouse. It's been a great way to connect with other people who share similar interests as you. And as I said, we'll get into it, but there has been a great community of people with disabilities on Clubhouse that are connecting with each other and sharing our stories. And, so you and I, we met through there. So I'm grateful that we have stayed connected and we're able to do this interview today.
Yes.
So to start off, can you tell us who you are? Who is Adriana? You can tell us as much or as little as you would like for us to know. Just give us a little bit of insight as to who you are.
Yeah, sure. So, I'm actually a first generation born Italian American. My parents immigrated from Italy. And, as a child, I went to regular public schools. Obviously, at the time, we, the ADA did not exist yet up until I was almost in ninth grade. And so my mom had to fight for my education, for me to get the education that I did get. So I was very fortunate, and I think that is where I learned a lot of my advocacy skills in the early years, is watching my mom advocate for myself. Also, at that time, when I was diagnosed with CP at around 12 months, is when I started receiving physical therapy and occupational therapy through Easter Seal. And through Easter Seal is where I was introduced to technology. And so at about 7 or 8 years old, this was back in the early to mid 80s, I was using a computer and I received my first power wheelchair. And that was really how I got my love and passion for technology, because I quickly realized that that was going to be my way to be able to do anything I would ever want in the future. So I became obsessed with technology and loved just learning about the latest tech, thinking of ways to make things better, innovating. I'm sure, as you know, Art, the world is not designed for us, so we constantly have to adapt and innovate to our environment. And I've always said that people with disabilities are inherent problem solvers. And so that is really where my passion stems from, is just personal experience. And now I have a assistive tech startup called Puffin Innovations that started back in late 2016, early 2017, and we are building technology for people with disabilities to lead more independent and inclusive lives.
That is
So I think
fantastic.
that's me
Yeah,
in a nutshell.
that is that's so great. And I love two of the things that you said, that we are, as people with disabilities, problem solvers, and also the fact that you said your advocacy work and your drive began when you were young, because we've had to, I'll speak for myself, and as you mentioned, we had to fight for things. We had to advocate for ourselves. Our parents had to advocate for us to get things, to get services and treatments that we needed. And it's still not easy to find some of these things,
Mm-hmm.
that we know are out there. I was a neighbor of mine last week or 2 weeks ago. I was getting into my car, and I drive with hand controls, and I've seen her in the neighborhood. She walks around. Every couple of days or so, I'll see her if I'm outside. And she had a brace on her leg that came up to her knee. And she said, "Oh, sir," she said, I'm so sorry to bother you. She said, "Do you have just a few minutes?" And I said, "Sure." And I didn't know what she wanted, but she wanted to talk to me about how I drive, because she didn't say what her condition was, but she had a brace, like I said, that came up to her knee. And she said it's
Right.
getting difficult for her to drive a car. So she wanted to know if I had, any assistive devices on my car. So I was telling her, I said, I'll be 40 years old this year, but when I started driving, back when I was 17, 18 years old, I said it was such a pain to try to find a school that had accessible technology, that had accessible features on their vehicles, so that I could learn how to drive. We knew they were out there, but
Yeah.
so that was when I was 18. But even before then, as you mentioned, as a young child, I can remember my parents fighting for things like physical therapy for me to get it in school while I was in school, and all
Mm-hmm.
types of things. So yes, we are definitely problem solvers for sure. We have to figure things out to make things happen sometimes. So I definitely appreciate that part of what you said for sure. And yes, we will. I'm excited to talk to you about the Puffin innovations as well. So we'll get to that shortly. But yeah, it's so exciting that you are, you're working towards making the world more inclusive and more accessible for people with disabilities. So that is something that I really appreciate that you and others are doing in the world. Um, so as I mentioned, you and I, we met on Clubhouse, which is one of the latest social media phrases that took over in 2020. I think
Yeah.
it began just for iPhone users. I believe now they're opened it up to Android users, and um, one of the I joined in December of 2020, and as I mentioned earlier, we connected through there because there is a large community of disabled users that are on the app. And one of the things that uh, the community of disabled users on the app are doing are they're trying to make it more inclusive and more accessible for people who are have vision impairments, people that are deaf or hard of hearing. So one of the great clubs that you created is called the 15%. Can you tell us
Mm-hmm.
about the 15% and what it means, and um, what your goal is, or what your goal was in creating that club on Clubhouse?
Yeah, so I joined in December as well of 2020. And that was, it was meeting all these interesting people, like yourself and others in the entrepreneurial space as well, is where I originally started focusing on the app. And then I started realizing that this was a great way to spread awareness. It was a great platform where you could spread awareness to people that you otherwise would not have access to. And so I kept meeting others like yourself, and I met Thomas Reed. Thomas Reed. Well, let me back up a little bit. So Corey Lee, those who know Corey Lee, Freeway Corey Lee, and I connected a while back, like a long time ago, because my sister is also in the travel space. She has a travel and dance show on PBS and Create TV called Bare Feet with Adriana Mallozzi, and so she travels literally in the same circles as Corey Lee, and so we were connected that way. And so when a few days earlier my sister joined Clubhouse, she was telling us, "Oh my goodness, you need to join," and she had accidentally sent the invite to the wrong person. And so while she was trying to get that invite back, someone else I knew also was on Clubhouse, and so that's how I got on. And so Corey Lee and I had noticed that at the time there weren't any discussion around disability, and it was more around the reality of disability, right? There were topics where people kind of told more borderline inspiration porn type of discussions, and we're like, this is not real. This is not the reality of disability, first of all, and second of all, this is perpetuating, that stigma of disability. It's perpetuating, oh, that poor person with the disability, or oh, they got up in the morning and they're so inspiring, right? And so we're like, we need to stop this. Like, this is something that's got to stop because that's the only way that society will learn, and us as a group, as a marginalized group, will not be so marginalized anymore. People understood what disability was and the realness of disability, and not just what is portrayed in the media. And so we were like, we need to start having these discussions. And then he introduced me to Sylvia Longmire, because obviously she's in the travel space as well, and Anna Packman. And I had met Thomas Reed throughout as well. And then we, hold on, my end, as well as I was friends with Diego Mariscal. And so I was like, this is going to be my core crew. And I was trying to come up with a cool name for a club on Clubhouse. And I was looking up stats and things like that, and it said 15% of the world's population has a disability. And I was like, that's it. We're going to call ourselves the 15%. And that's how it all began. And we really, that was our goal all along. It was really great to meet such powerhouses in the disability community who, shared the same views about advocacy, about, educating society about the reality of disability, and not this sugar-coated, rose-colored glasses of disability. And that's what we really wanted, this raw conversations, and that's what we did. And that's what we hope to continue to do. But I think it's why we grew so quickly, is because people realized that we were the real deal. We weren't people who were trying to just speak, right? We wanted those um, opposing views and opposing positions and opinions and having those really difficult discussions, because that's what's really important, and that's how change is brought about, is by having those conversations. And so I think that's why we grew so quickly and people embraced our club. But I would love to hear like your thoughts on that part of it, because I'm on the inside. It would be nice to have your perception of our club.
I love your club. I love it. And like we live with disability every day. We live it. It's our lives. Um, so we see we have the good days, the bad days, and I think going back to a phrase that you mentioned and I've talked about on the podcast before, inspiration porn. Um, it's not all good. Everything is not all good with us every day as living with disabilities, and I think um, for me, your club has brought real topics to people's minds that that you don't necessarily think of, or if or as someone who lives with a disability, I think about it, but they're not talked about. Those topics are not talked about, and one of the conversations I can recall is regarding the Oscars and Crip Camp, that was nominated for Best Documentary, and it lost to the Octopus movie, which was a good movie. It was good. However, however, um, so that was a real conversation that you all had in that room, and it was just like, really, like an octopus beat out like a real life story of like disability history of and that's what it really talked about, the movie Crip Camp, which was a fantastic movie. Judy Human was on my podcast a few months ago, maybe a year ago. I don't know when that was. Time just flies by and stands still all at the
I
same
know.
time lately. but so that's a story. Crip Camp is a story that talked about real life experiences of real human beings that lived through a time where things weren't accessible, and how they fought to get things more accessible, and it created things, legislation like the Americans with Disabilities Act, because of their actions. Um, so to really to have a space where your club exists on Clubhouse to talk about uh, that real life topic, and how it was very offensive that the movie lost to an octopus. uh, I think that really, for me, it really made me think, how people with disabilities are still treated. Um, and they were saying, I forget what year this is that the Oscars exist, but it was the first time that they actually had an accessible route to get onto the stage, just because they invited some of the filmmakers and directors and people who starred in the movie Crip Camp that were wheelchair users, and others that have disabilities. So it's like, why? Like, why is that so that there's a national award show that comes on every single year, and they don't show that there is an accessible route for someone from the audience who may have a disability to get up on the stage, until you're highlighting a film that highlights disabilities. So,
Yeah.
and just uh, the everyday life topics that you all address in your club, in the different rooms, and just where it's like, yeah, not every day is a good day, and
Yeah.
to have a space where people can share that openly and be supported and say like, oh, okay, like I get it, like today was a crappy day for me too. I think again, those are things that are not addressed. I think they talked about, I forget what car company it was, but it was a commercial that came on, I believe, during the Super Bowl that used a woman that had I think she was an amputee, and it was talking about her driving, and she was adopted, and the adoption agency said, something to the effect of, "Oh, she's going to have a very rough life." Um, so we had
Yeah.
we had a conversation about that and what that means, and um, and how her mother in that commercial, her mother said, yeah, like, her life, she might have to work for some things, but like she can do it, and it's worth her,
Yeah.
it's worth
She's
us.
a Paralympian
Right,
swimmer,
right,
actually.
yeah. So
Yeah.
it's like,
Yeah.
it's worth us working towards her being successful, like, and we're going to do it. So
Mhm.
I love the club. I love that you all created it, and the conversations that are being had in that space are very necessary, and the amount of people that we have that come into those rooms is amazing, and they're not all people that have disabilities, and encouraging people to invite their non-disabled friends to come in and hear these conversations, to give uh, an insight, and help them better understand what it is that we experience is, it's a really, really great thing that was created, and a great space that, I definitely enjoy, and hope that it definitely continues.
Thank you. Yeah.
Yeah,
We hope to. We plan on continuing, maybe not as frequent as when we were in lockdown.
right.
Now that the world is opening up, but um, we do intend on continuing and keeping it alive.
Yes.
Yes.
So
Yeah.
now I would like to shift the conversation to something you brought up in your introduction of yourself, which is your Puffin Innovations, your startup, and assistive technology, and why, how you created it, why you created it, and why you feel that it is important for things like this to be developed and shown, and spread throughout the world to assist those who have disabilities.
Yeah. So, as most things are invented or created, it stems from trying to solve a personal problem. Um, and so, right now, if you're watching this video, if you're listening to the podcast, I am in a power chair that is very decked out in tech. So I have mounts for my phone and joysticks, um and I like to call this my command center. Because when I am in this chair, I can pretty much do anything and control anything that I need to control. It is when I'm not in this chair that then I can't do anything, pretty much. And so that is what I was trying to solve, is when I'm not in my power chair, and contrary to what a lot of people believe, that we sleep in our wheelchairs, um, we do not, and we do not live in our wheelchairs. We can sit in other chairs typically. And so when I travel, I take my manual chair simply because it's easier, accessibility wise, especially traveling abroad. And so when I do that, I'm completely dependent on someone to do everything. And especially nowadays, everyone's hooked to their mobile devices, right? Either checking your email, reading books, because I'm an avid reader, and now that ebooks are so prevalent, it's the greatest thing ever. And so I couldn't do any of that when I traveled, and so I wanted to come up with a system that allowed me to still stay connected no matter where I was. So if I was on a recliner watching TV, if I was on a beach, No matter where I was sitting, if I was laying down, whatever, I still had access to my mobile device, because if you have access to your mobile device, you literally have access to the world. You can shop, you can do mobile banking, you can control your environment, right? With smart devices. And so this was the problem that I wanted to solve. But then I realized that I knew so many people who didn't have a cell phone because they physically couldn't interact with one. And so that's when the problem was not just about me, but it became about other people as well. Um, and so I created with a bunch of other super smart people, um, a mouth operated input device. So it acts as a wireless mouse, but it's mouth operated, it's portable, completely wireless, and it lets you have direct access to your devices. We also have an app that goes along with it, so the user has full control of all the settings, such as the speed, sensitivity. And then our app also allows one to switch from one device to another. So if I'm using my computer and my cell phone rings, I can quickly hop over to my cell phone, answer it, and then quickly hop back onto the computer, continue doing my work. Um, and then another thing that we noticed when we started Coffin, so it literally all started at a hackathon at MIT back in 2015. I had this idea. There were like 14 people that were there with ideas. So they have an assistive tech hackathon at MIT, and they reach out to the community for people living with disabilities who want to solve a problem, and they submit their idea. So this was the idea I submitted, and we had about 10 hours to kind of build some working prototype, or as close to working prototype. And my team was amazing, and we did it. It was very crude looking. It was ugly. Not too ugly, but ugly. We literally were taping things together as the judges were approaching. But long story short is that we won that competition, and that's how it all began. And then since then, I had partnered with a longtime friend of mine, and we applied to accelerator programs, and grants. And in 2017, we got a $200,000 grant from the VA, and we got into the accelerator program here in Boston, Mass Challenge. And that is how we were able to get to where we are today. Um, and unlike a lot of the assistive tech, especially when we were starting out, no one was taking advantage of machine learning or AI or IoT connectivity. And we're like, why aren't people taking advantage of this, right? Like, this would help develop better tech for people with disabilities. And so we coined the term smart assistive technology. Um, and we're using machine learning and AI, so our device can learn from the user and adapt to the user, whereas most assistive tech, the user has to adapt to it. So that is what we're working on.
That's fantastic. And I love how how it came from, an issue, a problem that you wanted to solve for yourself, but then you saw the bigger picture of, how it would be definitely beneficial to, your friends, like you said, who weren't able to physically work a cell phone. And it's amazing, like what people can think of. I don't think in those ways to develop. But it's always so amazing when like I'm listening to you and I'm just like, wow, like this makes so much sense. Like my brain just does not work in that way to develop those types of things. But that's really really great. So you is it available to the general public yet,
It
or
is not
okay,
yet.
okay,
So we need the funding to bring it to market, to manufacture it. So that's where we are right now.
hmm
It's basically ready to go. Um, we just need that little bit of funding to get it to market.
that's right. So whoever is listening to this that can help Adriana and her team out with
Yes.
this, please definitely reach out and let her know. And we have to make these types of devices available for people with disabilities because, as you said, you can do everything from your computer and everything from your phone, even with, like you
Mm-hmm.
said, from from reading books to mobile banking and booking trips and hotels and whatever else you can do from your phone these
And
days.
even electronic doors, right? A lot of hotels, you can use your phone to open up your hotel room door now.
Right.
And that just adds to the independence for people with disabilities. So for myself, I can't hold a key card,
Right.
but I can access my cell phone and tap a button to unlock a door.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, definitely a game changer in that way.
It is. It's so beneficial to such a wide range, a wide audience of people. So, I definitely wish you continued success on all of that you all are doing. It's a game changer for sure. The last question I have here, since a large portion of our conversation was about assistive technology and accessibility. What do you think could be most improved when it comes to accessible or assistive technology, especially in the world of social media that is so popular these days?
I think just understanding when you're designing an app, especially, um, the accessibility features of the platform. So iOS and Android, they have built-in features that, if you include the right code in your app, it allows the accessibility features to work with your app and allow any user to use your app. By not designing with accessibility in mind, you are automatically excluding people. And so, 1 in 4 people here in the US identify as having a disability. So you're excluding a large amount of people by not designing with accessibility in mind to begin with. Um, so yeah, I think that's a huge part. I know there are certain social media platforms that I hate using simply because they're not accessible to me. And I don't use them as much, and I don't post, or I don't know if I'm allowed to say the specific one on here. Is it okay or not okay?
Sure.
All right, so let's take Instagram.
Mm-hmm.
Instagram is the hardest or most difficult one, especially for posting the stories. Uh, there is no recognition on a mobile device, let's say for stickers or any of the buttons on the screen, um, at all. So a blind or visually impaired person would not even know that there's anything on the screen because there's nothing that's labeled. Um, and for someone like myself, I use VoiceOver, which uses the same tags as someone who is blind. So that I use voice control. Sorry about that.
Mm-hmm.
VoiceOver is for people who are blind or visually impaired, where it reads your screen, and voice control allows someone like myself to control their phone, speaking to it using their voice. But if nothing is labeled properly, then the phone does not know that there's anything on the screen to interact with. And so by not labeling anything, you can't do anything. Uh, so that's a major example, and that's platforms that I don't like using because I can't use it effectively or efficiently like most people who can use their hands
Mm-hmm.
or who can see. Right? I am sighted, but those who are not sighted don't really like Instagram because they don't know what's going on.
Yeah. And that is, and I think it's important that we mention those types of things and mention the name of of the app, of the social media platform, because it's, it helps bring that awareness, and it makes people aware of, like, wow, I never thought of it that way. I never, because I have vision, I wouldn't think in a way of being accommodating to someone who has vision loss, who is blind. And I think I think that's a lot of people's experience, where, my friends and family, they are more aware. My disability is a mobility disability. So my friends and family who know me well, they're more aware of inaccessible things when it comes to mobility features like curb cutouts and door frames, and the way that tables are set up. If I would be able to sit in my wheelchair and put my knees under the table, they become more aware of those things because of their experiences with me. um, but if you don't have that interaction with someone with a disability, a lot of times it's forgotten. And I
Yep.
think these social media platforms and website developers and app developers, and the list can go on and on and on. I think it would be very beneficial if they employed someone, yes, pay someone, actually
Yeah.
employ them to be
Yes.
to be some type of consultant
Yeah.
within their company, to make them aware of these of their lack of accessibility and inclusiveness. Um, that is, I think that's really how change starts to be made, when you simply call them out on their lack of
Yeah.
accessibility. And if enough pressure is applied, then we can all hope that changes will start to be made. I know, one thing with Instagram, I know now they're starting to do automatic captions that
Yeah.
they've
Yeah.
allowed. So it's like they're starting. It's a slow start, and it's
Yeah.
been around for so long. Like, it should have been something, that should have been a standard when they started. But it's like, okay, we'll take
Definitely.
it. It's like, we'll take it, but
Yeah.
we're getting there.
Yes. And on Clubhouse, I met someone who works for Instagram, and so as a result, I've had a direct connection and have voiced those issues, which is great. So now the design teams actually know, like they didn't even think or realize um, those issues.
Hmm.
And so Clubhouse for the win again.
Yes, yes.
Like making those really great connections.
Clubhouse has really
Um,
brought the executives of great companies and other organizations to, us everyday people, and allowed us to have these conversations where it's brought to their attention, because they just don't think about certain things. And it's really great to be able to make those connections through Clubhouse, and as you said, to continue that conversation, and to voice your opinions, and voice your concerns about the lack of accessibility. And the thing that bothers me the most, I think, is that it really misses out on a large number of people. As you said, 15%
Mhm.
of the worldwide population, 1 in 4 of the United States population, has some type of disability. So it's like we like to do stuff too. We like to search social
Yeah.
media sites like our friends and be in the know of what's happening in the latest music and fashion and news and all of that. But it has to be more accessible to us. And it goes beyond even the social media. As I mentioned, my mobility disability. I think like construction companies and architect companies that build
Mhm.
buildings and design hotel rooms and all kinds of things like that. They need people with disabilities on their teams to say, like, okay, I know this is what the Americans with Disabilities Act says. However,
Yeah.
it's not quite functional for somebody with
Right.
a disability, um, to put this here, or to have this, to have this mattress that's, 15 inches thick. Somebody cannot transfer from their wheelchair to a mattress that's on top of a box spring. And, so it just to, again, bring it to their attention, to raise that awareness of, okay, I know what your rules say, what your law says, and all of that, but it's not functional for someone who lives with a disability. So, uh, this is a really great conversation that I'm grateful to have had with you today, and I thank you for your time, and I look forward to more conversations on Clubhouse. As you said, as the world is opening up, I know people have not been on Clubhouse consistently as we were at the end of last year and the beginning of this year, but definitely look forward to being in rooms with you all, uh, in the future, to talk about some more disability related topics.
Yes, same here. And thank you for having me.
Oh, you're
Thank you.
very welcome, and keep up the great work. And of course, I will be in touch with you soon.
All right, great. Thanks.
Thanks. Have a good day.